Hello and welcome. I'm Geeta Mohan and you're watching India Today Global. We begin with the top story coming from the situation in Bangladesh. Now, a senior Labour leader of Bangladesh's National Citizens Party was shot in the head in Khulna, the second high-profile shooting of a youth leader this month as the country grappled with violent protests triggered by the killing of student leader Sharif Osman Hadi. Mohammad Muttalib Sikdar, 42, a central leader of the NCP's workers' organization, was shot at a house in the Sonadanga area of Khulna. According to party leaders, Sikdar had been involved in preparations for an upcoming divisional labor rally in Khulna. Hadi, an anti-India student leader associated with last year's July uprising, was also shot at close range on the 12th of December. He was first taken to Dhaka Medical College Hospital, where doctors found severe brain stem damage. Given the seriousness of his injuries, Hadi was airlifted to Singapore on the 15th of December and admitted to the neurosurgical intensive care unit at Singapore General Hospital. Hadi's death triggered protests across the country, with demonstrators protesting in several other cities, demanding justice and swift arrest. Authorities have warned against further violence while assuring firm action against those responsible for the killing and the targeting of these youth leaders. We have a reporter on the ground in Dhaka. We'll try connecting with him, but before that, let's go across to Ambassador Veena Sikri. She was a former Indian High Commissioner to Dhaka. Ambassador Sikri, thank you so much for joining us. How do you see the situation in Bangladesh spilling into and affecting the security situation in India?
I think the first thing that we have to look at, India is always interested in a democratic, peaceful and stable Bangladesh. And if it's democratic, peaceful and stable, as it was under Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina for 15 years, you'd have development, economic growth, development, and people benefiting from 6.5%, 7% rate of growth. The problem of the present situation is that it was a regime change operation last July, August. It was not a revolution. It was not a spontaneous uprising. It was not a spontaneous students' uprising. So here you have a regime change operation brought in through the Jamaat-e-Islami, backed by Pakistan, and behind Pakistan you have the other Western countries. And they are the Jamaat-e-Islami is the power behind the throne these days. Mohammad Yunus is only the mouthpiece of the Jamaat-e-Islami. And the Jamaat-e-Islami is bringing in, or wanting to bring in, an Islamist government. In the interim government, interim regime of Mohammad Yunus, you have all the Islamist parties, the Islami Andolan Bangladesh, the Hizb ut-Tahrir, the organization Hifazat-e-Islam, and others. And in the elections, you will see that it's the Islamist parties. Look at the killing of Osman Hadi. He was a political figure, very little known till last July, August, but rabidly anti-India. So in this urge to bring in an Islamist government, anti-Indianism is at an all-time high.
Right. What are the structural weaknesses? You spoke about extremist forces, but what are the structural weaknesses within Bangladesh that have allowed these extremist forces to gain ground?
I think there is no structural weakness except that this regime change operation, Mohammad Yunus, is backed by the Jamaat-e-Islami. Everything that he's doing and saying is as a mouthpiece of the Jamaat-e-Islami. And as I told you, they've brought into the interim regime all the Islamist parties. If there is an interim regime, of course, this one was sworn in on the constitution of Bangladesh, which had no provision for an interim regime. But even if you go by the old definition, which was earlier in the Bangladesh constitution, it was supposed to be a caretaker government just for 90 days with a non-party group of advisors to the chief advisor, and they're supposed to conduct elections, and that's all. But this regime deliberately said, no, we will do reforms before election and we will have elections after 4 years. It was opposed by the people. The demand of the people was for early elections, and giving into that pressure, Mohammad Yunus has now called elections in February of 2026. But still, the predilection is entirely in favor of an Islamist regime. I want to tell you that, when Osman Hadi was assassinated, as I said, a small, little-known person, but now the way in which he's being eulogized, he's being buried next to the grave of the national poet of Bangladesh, Qazi Nazrul Islam.
That's right.
And the way in which the Western embassies, the German embassy actually flew its flag at half-mast. You had Americans and others sending out strong messages of mourning and, sorrow and so on. It seems to be that many of these countries are taking a highly partisan approach, and that is completely undiplomatic.
Right. Ambassador Sikri, the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, in a recent interview talked about potential political assassination if she ever goes back. How much do you think Sheikh Hasina figures in this relationship between Bangladesh and India?
Look, I think first of all that Sheikh Hasina's presence in India does not affect our ties with Bangladesh in any way whatsoever. Look, we have extradition cases pending with so many countries. We have extradition cases pending with the UK, Vijay Mallya, Nirav Modi. Our relations with UK are continuing. We've even signed an FTA with them in the last few months. His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, has been in India for decades and decades and decades. Our relationship with China is continuing. We know each other's sensitivities. We continue the relationship, and the extradition is a very complex legal process. It cannot have an overnight. Even last December, without even doing a court case, Bangladesh regime was sending notes saying send back Sheikh Hasina. It's not credible at all. It's just something political. They're just trying to make a show to their own people that they're doing this.
Right. Ambassador Sikri, thank you so much for joining us here on the network. This is a developing situation and we'll keep tracking the story on the ground, but the larger perspective, zooming out a little, from political assassinations to rising extremist mobs, Bangladesh is spiraling out of control and India cannot stay on the sidelines. As student leaders are killed, lynchings terrorize minorities, and Islamist forces gain strength, New Delhi faces urgent security and humanitarian challenges. With the state losing authority and chaos spilling across borders, India's next moves are crucial. That's what we talk about on Statecraft tonight. Bangladesh is burning again in bullets, lynch mobs, and streets gripped by fear. Political leaders are being shot, minorities targeted on rumors, newsrooms attacked, and the state is losing control. Mohammad Yunus was meant to stabilize the country. Instead, under his watch, Islamist forces have surged and violence has become routine. What was promised as a democratic reset is fast turning into a breakdown. For India, this is not someone else's crisis. An unstable, radicalizing neighbor hits directly at national security and border stability. As Bangladesh unravels and Yunus falters, how long can New Delhi cling to old assumptions before reality dictates its next move? Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. What Bangladesh is witnessing today is not random chaos. It is the predictable outcome of a political experiment gone wrong. The removal of Sheikh Hasina did not usher in reform or reconciliation. It opened the gates to violence, radicalism, and a brutal power struggle, one that the Yunus administration has proved incapable of controlling. So at some point, we have to understand that the spillover from across the border is inevitable. What are India's options as Bangladesh erupts again? In December this year, Bangladesh saw a string of targeted killings. Sharif Osman Hadi, a student leader who rose from last year's July uprising, was assassinated in Dhaka, shot point blank by motorcycle-borne gunmen. Then came Mohammad Muttalib Sikdar, a senior labor leader of the National Citizens Party, shot in the head in Khulna. While initial reports described his condition as critical, party sources later said the bullet grazed his skull and his condition is now stable. These were not crimes of passion. They were professional hits, close-range shootings, clean escapes, a signature of organized political violence returning to Bangladesh's streets. And Hadi's killing, in particular, acted as a matchstick thrown into dry tinder. This is where Mohammad Yunus enters the frame. Installed as interim chief with global goodwill and Western applause, Yunus was expected to guide Bangladesh towards stability and elections. Instead, under his watch, Islamist ambition has been uncapped, not contained. And then came the moment that exposed the depth of Bangladesh's dissent. The lynching of Deepu Chandra Das, a 27-year-old Hindu garment worker, accused on rumor alone of insulting Islam. What followed was medieval. Deepu was beaten to death by a mob, his body stripped, tied to a tree, flogged after death, set on fire, burnt again on a highway as crowds chanted religious slogans and blocked traffic. This was not spontaneous rage, it was performative violence, a message to minorities, a message to dissenters, and a message to the state itself, that the monopoly of violence no longer belongs to the government. India already faces a 2.5-front challenge. Allowing Bangladesh to slide further into chaos risks turning that into something far worse. Bangladesh is burning. The question is whether India will continue to watch from the sidelines or finally act with clarity, realism, and resolve. Thank you for watching Statecraft. Now, freshly released documents from the Jeffrey Epstein investigation are triggering renewed controversy as the U.S. Justice Department unveils new photos and evidence, prompting political backlash, public scrutiny, and questions over what remains hidden. Mahashweta Lala with this report.
The release of new documents and photos as part of Epstein files has created ripples across various industries. After continued pressure from Democrats, the U.S. Department of Justice released fresh evidence from its investigation into the late financier and sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The Department of Justice also restored a photo of President Trump, which was earlier removed while releasing the files. In a statement, the DOJ stated that the photo of Trump was flagged by the Southern District of New York for potential further action to protect victims. The image restored showed a desk with an open drawer containing a photo of Trump with various women. Meanwhile, a photograph of Rush Hour director Brett Ratner posing with shirtless Jean-Luc Brunel, the late French modeling agent and longtime Epstein associate, was also released. Ratner has directed the First Lady's new documentary titled Melania, which showcases the 20 days before returning to the White House following President Trump's inauguration on January 20th. The trailer of the project has come out ahead of its release on June 30th. The deadline to release all files related to Epstein was December 19th, but the partial release of the files and certain redacted files have not been welcomed by families of victims and Democrats.
I thought that this bill sort of alluded to the fact that we should be getting everything released. And so there's also this mixed feeling of what are we hiding here?
They owe the Congress and the American public an explanation for every redaction. That I didn't see published on the DOJ page, but the law is very clear that any redaction has to be justified in writing. They need to do that.
Besides Trump, many other photographs of who's whom have surfaced. A photo of former Prince Andrew Mountbatten Windsor lying across the laps of several women were released. Mountbatten Windsor, who was stripped of his royal title over his ties with Epstein, has denied of any wrongdoings. The other famed personalities whose photographs have been part of the Epstein files include Michael Jackson with President Bill Clinton and Diana Ross. Bill Clinton, who is seen in a tub, and also a painting of Clinton in a dress. The file also has a photo of Virgin Group founder Richard Branson. With Mahashweta Lala, Bureau Report, India Today.
From calling female reporters obnoxious to piggy, to calling Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni beautiful, President Trump has shocked and startled both his critics and supporters. This time, Trump left his supporters baffled at a North Carolina rally when he spoke of his wife Melania Trump's undergarments. Though the rally focused on inflation and lowering drug prices, Trump shifted away from the topic and started speaking about the 2022 FBI raid at his Florida home. He said the federal agents went into his wife's closet and accused them of messing with his and her wardrobe. He further spoke in detail about how Melania organizes her wardrobe, referring to her undergarments, which he thinks is properly steamed.
My wife's closet, and I'll say this, number one, it's very bad, but it sounds a little strange. They looked at her drawers. You have drawer, and then you have drawer. They looked at both. And she's a very meticulous person, you know, like these people. It's just like she'd fit into your group very well. She'd be very happy with her, but everything is perfect. Her undergarments, I want to use a nice, sometimes referred to as panties, are folded, perfect, wrapped. They're like so perfect. I said, that's beautiful. You know, it's the part of the world she came from. Everything was perfect, no problem. Fold, fold, fold. I think that she steams them, make sure. Just that it... We came home. I wasn't there when the raid took place. A raid of a popular president, a former president. She opened the drawers and it was not that way. They were a mess. It was all over the place.
From the president to the vice president, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has described Christianity as central to America's identity. This statement has triggered a wave of reactions online, with social media users pointing to the fact that his wife, Usha Vance, comes from a Hindu background. Speaking at Turning Point USA's America Fest in Phoenix, Arizona, Vance told the audience that the country's roots and values were inseparable from Christianity. Netizens were quick to react. They questioned how could he say so when his wife is Hindu. Users wrote, and I quote, "America always will be a Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, Christian, atheist, agnostic nation." Another said, "Isn't his wife Hindu? Wonder what she and her family think of this." Another post mocked Vance's religious journey, saying he wasn't even a Christian a few years ago. But many supported Vance for his views and said Vance was absolutely right to say that Christianity is the creed of the American nation. But the remark brought back to life past comments of Vance about his wife's faith. Vance said his wife, Usha Vance, was raised in a Hindu family and that he hoped she might one day become Christian. However, he added that faith should be a matter of free will. He had said, and I quote, "If she doesn't, then God says everybody has free will, so that doesn't cause a problem for me."
People are talking about American identity and figuring out what it is that unites us. But I want to say something here. The only thing that is truly served as an anchor of the United States of America is that we have been, and by the grace of God, we always will be a Christian nation.
The Beckhams now are facing reports of a family rift. What's gone wrong between Victoria and David Beckham and their son Brooklyn, and why has this private tension suddenly become public? Sujata Sharda decodes this for us.
We are not sure if the Beckham family will inspire a fictional series or not, but definitely the family has sent the media in a mini frenzy. Brooklyn Beckham has reportedly blocked his parents, David and Victoria Beckham. Feud began after David and Victoria Beckham's eldest son, Brooklyn, now 26, married American actor Nicola Pledz, who is 30, in 2022. Since then, reports of misunderstanding among them have been doing rounds. Questions grew louder when David and Victoria Beckham were absent from Brooklyn and Nicola's vow renewal ceremony in August. Earlier in 2025, there were rumors of a fallout between Brooklyn and the Beckham's second son, Romeo, over the latter's girlfriend, Kim Turnbull. According to social media claims, Kim had previously dated Brooklyn, which became a reason for their tension, although Romeo made it clear that Kim and Brooklyn never dated. The divide escalated when Brooklyn and Nicola skipped David's 50th birthday. However, the Netflix documentary doesn't mention about the family rift and Brooklyn is largely absent from the entire series. Claims come after reports suggest that Brooklyn will not be spending Christmas with Beckham family this year. Bureau Report, India Today.
With that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Today Global.